The most controversial part of Hamilton's plan is his call for a national bank, a Bank of the United States, sometimes abbreviated as BUS. The Bank of the United States is an idea that Hamilton got from England. He's quite a bit of an Anglophile. He thinks that Britain is the premier nation in the world, the premier empire in the world, and the premier economic power in the world, so we should do a lot of the things that Britain has done. One of the things Britain did was have a national bank. Hamilton wants to set ours up just like Britain did. Hamilton wants a Bank of the United States that is privately owned, meaning individual people own this or parts of this bank, but the federal government is the majority owner, so it owns over half of it. Hamilton argued that this was needed to grow American commerce, American business, and trade. He pointed to England as an example of this being successful. He says the bank would serve as a depository for federal funds. So in other words, when federal taxes were collected, they would be put in the Bank of the United States where they can earn interest. He also said the Bank of the United States would issue money, and that money used by the Bank of the United States could always be used for federal taxes. So it might have been paper money, but it would always be valued. At this time in world history, including the United States, countries used what was called commodity-backed money. So to get paper money, you had to bring gold or silver or some other valuable metal coins into the bank, deposit them in the bank, and then they would give you banknotes in exchange. The banknotes issued by the Bank of the United States would be extremely valuable and widely accepted because everybody would know that they could use them to pay their federal taxes. That wasn't always the case with other banks that might have issued current or paper money. That might have only been valued in that area where people knew they could go bring it to that bank and turn it in for hard currency. Some objections to the bank controversy stem from the fact that Hamilton's rich friends, these wealthy merchants here, would definitely benefit from the bank. They might become part owners. Either way, they're going to benefit from a bank way more than your average American. But the biggest objection to Hamilton's bank proposal is that nowhere in the Constitution does it say that Congress or the federal government, for that matter, is allowed to create a Bank of the United States. And this is the issue at the heart of the constitutional controversy over Hamilton's economic plan. You have two groups of Americans. You have some Americans, like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who we would call strict constructionists. They really like Amendment number 9 and Amendment number 10 in the Bill of Rights, which say basically that the powers not delegated to the federal government cannot do those things. There are certain powers. You could call them enumerated powers or delegated powers, because remember, under the Articles, the states had the power, and these were the ones that the states delegated or gave to the federal government. These enumerated or delegated powers are clearly listed in the Constitution. If it's not listed in there, the federal government can't do it. Alexander Hamilton and others are what we would call loose constructionists. They would say, not like the strict constructionists say you need to read the Constitution line for line, word for word, take it exactly as it says. But a loose constructionist says, no, you got to read between the lines. You've got to interpret a little bit, because there is a very important clause in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, the very last clause of Section 8 says that Congress is allowed to do anything that is necessary and proper to carry out its delegated powers. So if one of Congress's delegated powers is to regulate commerce, that's the Commerce Clause, which, oh, by the way, commerce is a really big thing. If Congress is supposed to regulate commerce, and Congress thinks that they need a Bank of the United States to be able to regulate commerce, well then creating a bank is allowed under the Elastic Clause, because a bank is necessary and proper to carrying out one of its delegated powers, regulating commerce. This is why loose constructionists like Hamilton says, yeah, there are delegated powers, but there are also implied powers. All right, over there on the left, that should say report on manufacturers. This is a congressional report that comes out in 1791, which states that the United States is dependent on Europe for finished goods. This is not shocking. This is not surprising. This is not overwhelming to anyone who has an understanding of the American market, because Americans for a long time had been producing raw materials for Britain, sending them to Britain or selling them to Britain, and then buying those finished goods that the British produced. United States has become overly dependent on finished goods, especially since the end of the Revolutionary War, when British manufacturers started bringing over those finished goods in large numbers again, and really kind of crushed any growing American industry. Hamilton and others see this as a long-term problem. An independent nation cannot exist relying on finished goods from other countries, they feel. They need to develop their own industry. And the way they propose to do that is by passing a protective tariff. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. A tariff would raise the price on imported goods. So a tariff would make American goods cheaper by comparison to British or other European goods. And it would encourage Americans to buy your American goods and not buy European goods. This will help get American industry going and grow to where they can compete on a level playing field with British and other European industries. This is Hamilton's argument. But, like almost everything else, there is a strong objection. And again, it comes heavily from the South as well as the West. The other problem with tariffs is that they raise prices overall. I'll do a demonstration in class to show how this works. But tariffs raise prices on finished goods for everyone. And as a result, Americans end up paying more. Now, if you sell finished goods, maybe you're okay with that. But if you don't, then you're not benefiting from tariffs. You're just seeing your prices at the store go up. Tariffs have another problem in that if we pass a tariff on British goods, the British are going to respond by passing a tariff, or maybe worse, an embargo, an outright ban on American goods, and really, especially on the things that we're exporting, like raw materials, like Southern cotton, which is being exported to Europe. Southerners didn't want to lose that marketplace. Southerners didn't want to see British tariffs on their cotton. Southerners didn't want to see European countries putting an embargo and not buying any American cotton. So they're opposed to anything that might open up a trade war with Europe. The final argument would be that tariffs would only benefit the wealthy. Tariffs end up hurting people of lower economic status. So a compromise is reached where only a small tariff is put in place in 1792. But this is not the first time, nor is it this is not the last time we're going to talk about tariffs. Tariffs will be an important issue up until probably 1920, which by that point, the government is getting most of its income from the income tax. But at this point, there is no income tax. So not only is the tariff important for regulating trade, it's essential for the government raising any revenue that it might have.